Do you hear the birds too? The small voice broke through the sterile quiet of the pediatric wing like a crack of sunlight through heavy clouds. Nurse Reese Callahan looked up from adjusting the IV line to find 4-year-old Marlo Hensley sitting upright in her hospital bed, her dark eyes fixed on the window where sparrows were gathering on the ledge outside. Reese moved closer, her footsteps soft on the linoleum. "I do hear them, sweetheart. They're singing just for you." Marlo didn't respond with words. She rarely did. Instead, she hummed, a perfect mimicry of the birdsong, her small hands flapping gently in a rhythmic pattern that Reese had come to recognize as joy. The little girl had been admitted 3 days ago with a severe respiratory infection, and in those 72 hours, Reese had watched her father, Camden Hensley, transform from a commanding CEO into a man unraveling at the edges. Camden stood now in the doorway, his tie loosened, his usually impeccable suit wrinkled from sleeping in a chair. At 33, he carried the weight of running a tech empire and single parenthood with equal exhaustion. His ex-wife, Miranda, had left when Marlo was diagnosed with autism at age 2. "I didn't sign up for this," she'd said, her designer luggage already packed. "I can't do this life." He'd been doing it alone ever since. "Mr. Hensley," Reese said gently, noting the dark circles under his eyes, "when's the last time you ate something?" Camden blinked, as if pulled from deep water. I don't remember. Yesterday, maybe?" "There's a cafeteria on the second floor. I'll stay with Marlo. Go, 20 minutes. When he hesitated, Reese added softly, "She's safe with me, I promise." Something in her voice, steady, warm, unshakable, made Camden nod. As he left, Marlo began to hum again, and Reese hummed with her, matching the melody note for note. The little girl's eyes widened with delight, and for the first time since admission, she smiled. Reese understood more than Camden knew. At 26, she'd raised her younger brother Donovan after their parents died in a car accident 8 years earlier. Donovan was 19 now, studying engineering at community college, but those early years had taught her everything about patience, sacrifice, and finding joy in the smallest victories. She'd learned to speak in Donovan's language when words failed him, to celebrate the quiet triumphs that others might miss. When Camden returned with coffee he wouldn't drink, he found Reese and Marlo sitting together on the bed, sorting colorful medical tape by shade. Marlo was organizing them in precise rainbow order, her concentration absolute. Reese was simply watching, not correcting, not rushing, just present. "She's never let anyone but me sit that close," Camden said, his voice thick with emotion. Reese looked up, smiling. "She's teaching me her system. It's brilliant, actually. Every color has a purpose." Over the following days, as Marlo's lungs slowly healed, something else began to mend too. Camden started to see his daughter through Reese's eyes, not as a collection of challenges to be managed, but as a complete person with her own beautiful logic. Reese showed him how Marlo communicated through patterns, through music, through the careful arrangement of objects, how her silence wasn't emptiness, but a different kind of fullness. "You're good with her," Camden said one evening as Reese helped Marlo string beads onto medical tubing they'd repurposed as a craft project. "Better than her regular therapists. Better than her mother ever was." Reese's hands stilled. "May I ask you something, Mr. Hensley?" "Camden, please." "Camden, do you see her differences as deficits or as part of who she is?" The question landed like a stone in still water. Camden was quiet for a long moment, watching his daughter's happy concentration. I don't know anymore. When Miranda left, I was so angry. Angry at her for abandoning us, angry at the diagnosis, angry at... He stopped, his jaw tightening. At Marlo, for not being the child we'd imagined. That's horrible, isn't it? "It's honest," Reese said gently, and honesty is where healing starts. That night, after Marlo fell asleep, Camden found Reese in the nurse's station finishing her charts. "Can we talk?" he asked. They walked to the small family lounge, empty at this late hour. Camden sank into a chair, suddenly looking much older than 33. "I need to tell you something about why I'm really like this, why I'm so broken about all of it." Reese waited, patient as always. "My little sister, Ivy, was autistic. Growing up, my parents spent everything, time, money, emotional energy, trying to fix her. Therapy after therapy, treatment after treatment. They loved her, but they never just accepted her." His voice cracked. "She died when she was 16, complications from epilepsy, and her last words to my mother were, 'I'm sorry I couldn't be normal.' She apologized for existing as she was." Tears rolled down Camden's face unchecked. "When Marlo was diagnosed, I promised myself I'd be different, but Miranda's leaving triggered everything. All my parents' fears became my fears. What if I can't give Marlo everything she needs? What if she grows up feeling like she has to apologize for being herself? What if I'm failing her the way my parents failed Ivy?" Reese reached across the space between their chairs and took his hand. "You're here, Camden, in this hospital room, day and night. You haven't left her side. That's not failure. That's love. But," she paused, choosing words carefully, "love isn't just about being present. It's about seeing clearly. Your sister needed to be accepted, not fixed. So does Marlo." "How do I do that when I'm so scared?" Camden whispered. "The same way you do everything else, one day at a time, and you let people help you. You don't have to carry this alone." The revelation came 2 days later when Dr. Patricia Wendell, the hospital's child psychologist, requested a meeting with Camden. Reese was there too, at Camden's request. "Mr. Hensley," Dr. Wendell began, her expression serious, "I need to discuss something important. Marlo's case has been reviewed by our team, and we've noticed some concerning patterns in her file from her previous pediatrician." Camden stiffened. "What kind of patterns?" "Overprescription of sedatives, multiple medication changes without proper documentation, and," Dr. Wendell pulled out a folder, "several notes from your ex-wife requesting medications to calm Marlo down during social situations. These prescriptions were inappropriate for a child her age and could have worsened her respiratory issues." The blood drained from Camden's face. "Miranda was medicating her? Why wasn't I told?" "The prescriptions were filled during times you've indicated you were traveling for work. Your signature was on the consent forms, but," Dr. Wendell pushed the papers toward him, "this doesn't look like your signature to me."
Camden stared at the forged signatures, rage and guilt warring on his face. She was drugging our daughter, to make her easier to handle, to make her seem more normal to her friends. His hands shook. "And I didn't notice. I was so busy working, building the company, thinking I was providing for them. I didn't see what was happening in my own home." Reese's hand found his shoulder. "You see it now. That's what matters." But Camden shook his head, standing abruptly. "I was supposed to protect her. After what happened to Ivy, I promised myself, and I failed. I was so focused on being successful, on proving I could handle everything, that I let someone hurt my daughter." He left the room, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Reese found him an hour later in the hospital chapel, sitting in the last pew, his head in his hands. She sat beside him, saying nothing at first, just being present in his pain. "My brother Donovan," she finally said, her voice quiet in the sacred space, "has ADHD. When our parents died and I became his guardian, I was 21 years old and terrified. I made so many mistakes, Camden. I yelled when I should have listened. I demanded he sit still in a world that told him to move. I cried at night thinking I was ruining his life." Camden looked at her, really looked, and saw the shared understanding of failure and love intertwined. One day, Reese continued, he said to me, "Reese, you're trying so hard to be perfect that you forgot to just be my sister." He was 15 and wiser than I'd ever been. That's when I learned. Our kids don't need us to be perfect. They need us to be present, to be humble enough to learn and to love them exactly as they are. "How do I fix this?" Camden asked hoarsely. "You already started. You brought her here. You stayed. You noticed when I hummed with her, and you wanted to understand why it worked. You're learning her language instead of forcing her to speak yours." Reese's eyes were gentle but fierce. "That's not failure, Camden. That's courage. And courage doesn't mean never being afraid. It means being terrified and showing up anyway." When they returned to Marlowe's room, they found her awake, arranging her stuffed animals in a specific pattern on her bed. Camden approached slowly, sitting on the edge of her bed. "Hey, Bug," he said softly, using the nickname he hadn't said in months, not since Miranda left and everything became so heavy. Marlowe looked up at him, her dark eyes so much like his own. "I want to tell you something," Camden continued, his voice steady now. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry I've been so worried about what you can't do that I forgot to see everything you can do. I'm sorry I let fear make me forget how to just be your dad." Marlowe tilted her head, considering. Then she picked up her favorite stuffed rabbit and handed it to him, her highest offering of comfort and trust. Camden took the rabbit, tears streaming freely now. "Thank you, sweetheart. I love you, exactly as you are. I promise I'm going to do better." And then a sound that made Reese's breath catch in her throat. Marlowe laughed. Not a giggle, but a full, bright laugh of pure joy. She launched herself into her father's arms, humming her bird-song melody, and Camden held her close, humming with her, finally speaking her language. From the doorway, Reese watched, tears on her own cheeks. This was why she'd become a nurse. Not for the medical procedures or the clinical protocols, but for these moments when walls came down and love broke through. 3 weeks later, Marlowe was discharged with a clean bill of health. Camden had already contacted attorneys about Miranda's medication fraud. More importantly, he'd rearranged his entire life, cutting back on travel, hiring supportive caregivers who specialize in neurodivergent children, and most significantly, simply slowing down to be present. On Marlowe's last day in the hospital, Camden found Reese during her break. "I never properly thanked you. You didn't just help Marlowe heal physically, you helped me see her, really see her, for the first time since her diagnosis." Reese smiled. "You would have found your way there. You love her too much not to." "Maybe, but you showed me the path." He paused, then added carefully, "Marlowe asks about you. She's been humming a new melody, and I think it's the sound of your voice. She wants to see you again." "I'd love that," Reese said warmly. "Bring her by during visiting hours. We can sit by the window and listen to the birds." Camden nodded, then surprised them both by pulling her in a brief, grateful hug. "Thank you for giving me my daughter back. Thank you for reminding me that the silence before her laughter was not emptiness. It was just a different kind of music I'd forgotten how to hear." In the end, the hospital room's silence hadn't needed to be filled with words. It needed to be understood, honored, and met with kindness. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give another person is not to change them, but to see them clearly, to recognize that different doesn't mean less, and that every person speaks their own language of love if we're patient enough to learn it. The laughter came not from forcing change, but from acceptance, and that made all the difference. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.